is Neil Southgate and I'm your brass and woodwind teacher at Penrail Comprehensive School. Today we're going to be looking at how to assemble and how to put together a flute and how to hold it. Now, you've either got one flute which has a curly top, and that flute is often already assembled, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you've got a regular sized flute, it comes into three different parts. You've got the head joint, that's the bit with the lip plate on that you blow through, the body of the instrument, and then the tail of the instrument. Now, when you pick them out of the case, it's important not to grab the flute by the keys. Now, these are easily bent and shift out of place, which makes it quite hard sometimes to make decent sounds. So what we can do instead is you want to make sure you pick it up from the place which doesn't have any holes or buttons on it. Similarly, with the other end, you want to do that too. So when we connect them together, sometimes you might want to put some Vaseline on here to make it a little bit more slippery if it doesn't go on easily. But otherwise, we line them up and twist them on. Twisting is often a more helpful way to try and get the two pieces together than simply pushing together. Once you've twisted them on correctly, we want to try and line up the keys. So you've got your keys on the top part moving down. Now, a lot of people think that you want to twist this bit so that the keys line up. But if you look at your hand, your pinky is actually a lot smaller than the rest of, or a lot shorter than the rest of your fingers. And when we want to put our instrument here, it won't be able to reach round if it's twisted all the way. So what we want is just to twist this bottom bit so that this straight piece, so it's quite hard to see on the video, but you can see this straighter piece, not the keys, wants to line up with the keys on the top. So the keys are going to be facing upwards, and so will this little plate here where the keys rest. Once you've assembled this part, again, make sure you're holding the instrument not onto the keys, so not to bend them. You can start to assemble the head joint, and again with a twisting motion. Okay. Once it's twisted on, what we're looking for is that the hole points upwards. And quite often, if you look down the instrument like this, you will want the whole of the lip plate to line up with the buttons here. So the buttons are pointing to the ceiling, and so is the lip plate. Okay, so that's on assembling your instrument. What about holding it? Well, it's a really nice and simple technique. First of all, you've got two hands, your left hand and your right hand. And if you make a claw shape, or mini C's, I like to call them C's or claw. And with your right hand, this is the one that's going to be in charge of the key side of the instrument, or the side which opposite side to the head joint. And it's in control of buttons 4, 5 and 6, where our thumb rests below, and our pinky reaches over to the pinky key over here. Now if we make our C shape and make sure that our hand is pointing away from us, that is, your palm is pointing towards the room or the wall that's opposite you, make that C shape. The flute very simply slots in there. Okay, it might take you a few times to find where these keys are, but we'll do that in lessons, or it can be shown separately. But if you've got that C shape, your hand is nice and steady and it's holding on to the flute this way. With your left hand, you've still got that C shape, but instead of pointing at the wall opposite you, you're going to turn that hand and touch your opposite shoulder. So your left hand is touching your right shoulder. You're gently then going to make the C shape and drag your hand out like this. It's still pointing towards your shoulder. The flute actually slots in quite nicely here. So if you keep that hand in that same shape pointing towards your right shoulder, you'll be able to put the flute into the correct shape. Your thumb presses down the big key. So there's two options, three options. No key, pressing the one on the top, or this big key just below. Your thumb rests on the key just below. Your first finger presses down on what's technically the second key of the flute, but we call it key number 1. Then we skip 1, and that's now key number 2. And key number 3 is right next door to this extra key that you will see scrolling down. So we've got 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay? And that's your first few notes of the flute. Now for the first note of the flute, you only need to make that pinchy shape with your thumb and first finger. Now quite often, when you try and put your hand on, it's hard to reach those keys. But if you remember that you're pointing it towards your shoulder and it's at an angle, your fingers actually should sit quite naturally on the keys, and you won't have to reach just to skip out that one in the middle there. Okay, so that's on holding the flute. So remember, C shapes, left hand on shoulder and right hand pointing away from you. When you bring them out, your left hand is pointing towards your shoulder, right shoulder, and your hand is still pointing forwards. And that is how we hold the flute.